Your baby won't stop crying. It's the middle of the night. There's no nightlight, no formula, no pediatrician on call. The nearest other adult is asleep an arm's length away. This is parenthood, 100,000 years ago. For most of human history, this wasn't a crisis. It was just Tuesday. Today, the average new parent spends large stretches of the night completely alone with a crying infant. For roughly 95% of our species' existence, that almost never happened. A baby was rarely alone with just one caregiver, day or night. So what changed? And why does so much of modern parenting feel harder than it should? Let's start with what your body still remembers, even if your life has forgotten it. Human babies are born strange. Compared to other primates, a human infant arrives almost helpless. No grip strength to cling to fur, no ability to regulate its own body heat. A brain that's only about a quarter of its adult size, still folding itself into shape for years. Anthropologists call this secondary altriciality, a fancy way of saying human babies are born unusually underdeveloped, almost like the pregnancy got cut short on purpose. In a sense, it did. A human baby's head is already pushing the limits of what a human pelvis can deliver. If gestation lasted as long as our brain development would need, birth would be nearly impossible. So evolution found a workaround. Finish the baby on the outside. That workaround changed everything about how ancient humans had to live. Anthropologist Sarah Blaffer Hrdy spent decades studying this exact puzzle. Her research, laid out in her book Mothers and Others, argues that human infants were never built to be raised by one person alone. They were built for what she calls cooperative breeding, a system where multiple adults, not just the biological mother, share the work of keeping a child alive. Hrdy points out that humans are one of the only great apes where mothers regularly hand their infants to other people in the first hours and days of life. Chimpanzee mothers almost never do this. Human mothers do it instinctively, almost immediately. That single difference may be the reason our species exists at all. Picture an actual day inside a hunter-gatherer camp, the kind of life our ancestors lived for the overwhelming majority of human history. A baby is born. Within hours, it's being held by an aunt, a grandmother, an older cousin, sometimes a father, sometimes a teenager who isn't even related by blood. Researchers call these extra caregivers allomothers, allo simply meaning other. Studies of the Hadza people of Tanzania, conducted by anthropologist Frank Marlowe, found that Hadza infants are held by someone other than their mother for a significant portion of their waking hours, sometimes more than half. Among the Aka people of Central Africa, researcher Barry Hewlett documented something even more striking. AK fathers hold their infants for hours at a time, far more than fathers in most industrialized societies, sometimes even offering a breast to soothe a crying baby, simply because closeness itself is calming. This wasn't gentle parenting theory. It was survival math. A mother who has just given birth cannot hunt, cannot travel long distances carrying heavy loads, and cannot gather enough food alone while also caring for a newborn around the clock. If she had to do it by herself, both she and the baby were in serious danger. So the group absorbed the cost. Everyone fed the mother. Everyone helped carry the baby. Everyone took a turn at 3 in the morning. There's a reason grandmothers specifically show up again and again in this story. Anthropologist Kristen Hawkes proposed what's now called the grandmother hypothesis. The idea that human females evolved to live decades past menopause specifically because older women who could no longer have children of their own became extraordinarily valuable at keeping their grandchildren alive. A postmenopausal woman could gather food, watch toddlers, and free up the mother to have another child sooner. Hawkes' research suggests this single shift in family structure may have helped fuel the unusually long human childhood, the very thing that makes our species so slow to grow up and so dependent on a wide circle of support. So let's reconstruct what an actual day really looked like. Morning. The baby wakes pressed against someone's skin, not alone in a crib in another room. There is no separate nursery, no monitor with a blinking light. The baby is simply there, against a body, hearing a heartbeat it already recognizes from 9 months in the womb. Throughout the day, the baby is passed from arms to arms as the group moves, gathers, cooks, and talks. Crying is answered almost instantly, because someone is always close enough to respond. At night, the baby sleeps beside an adult, often co-sleeping with the mother or another caregiver, woken and soothed within seconds rather than minutes. This constant physical contact wasn't indulgence, it was regulation. A human infant cannot yet control its own body temperature, heart rate, or stress hormones particularly well. Researchers studying skin-to-skin contact have found that a caregiver's body can literally help stabilize an infant's breathing and warmth, almost like an external organ doing a job the baby's own body hasn't finished learning to do. Now here's the twist that flips the whole story. You might assume this constant attention made ancient babies clingy or spoiled. The opposite seems to be true. Cross-cultural studies of foraging societies, including work compiled by anthropologist Melvin Connor on hunter-gatherer childhoods, repeatedly found that infants who were held constantly and responded to immediately tended to cry less overall, not more, as they grew. The responsiveness didn't create dependence. It built a kind of baseline calm, a sense that the world reliably answers distress, which seemed to make children more secure, not less. Compare that to a strange archaeological discovery from Liguria, Italy. In a cave called Arma Verana, researchers uncovered the burial of an infant girl who died around 10,000 years ago, decorated with dozens of carefully pierced shell beads and pendants, an extraordinary amount of ornamentation for someone who lived only a few months. Whatever this baby's life looked like, her death tells us she was deeply, deliberately mourned by an entire community, not just grieving parents. Childhood, even infancy, mattered enormously to people who had almost nothing to spare. Then agriculture arrived, and the math of childhood quietly broke. As humans settled into farms and villages, families grew smaller and more isolated. Land was owned, not shared. Work shifted from a roaming group effort to a household burden. The wide circle of Allomothers, the aunts, the cousins, the unrelated teenagers, the grandmothers living just a few yards away, started shrinking down to whoever happened to live under the same roof. By the time industrialization scattered families across cities and countries entirely, many parents found themselves doing, completely alone, what an entire foraging band once did together. That's the trap nobody warns new parents about. The instincts are exactly the same as they were 100,000 years ago. The infant still expects constant contact, constant response, a rotating cast of caregivers within arm's reach. But the support system that made all of that sustainable has, for many families today, almost entirely disappeared. This is why new parents so often describe exhaustion that feels almost evolutionary in scale, because in a sense, it is. You're not failing at something instinct should make easy. You're succeeding at something instinct never expected you to do alone. So when you see a new parent struggling under the weight of solo night feeds, isolated days, and no village in sight, you're not watching a personal failure. You're watching a 300,000-year-old support system trying to function with most of its parts missing. Your baby still won't stop crying. It's the middle of the night. But this time, you finally understand exactly why it feels so hard and exactly what's missing.